Thank you very much for accepting my request for this interview.
You are most welcome. My pleasure.
You are a tenor sax player. You play the flute, the alto flute also.
Yeah.
You are a composer and arranger.
Very much so.
You work in many fields, like in jazz. You compose for symphonic settings. You worked also for film and television.
Correct.
And you are also an educator.
Correct. All true.
It's all true.
Believe it or not, it's all true.
And you're born in Cincinnati, which is in Ohio.
Correct.
You're born in 1963.
Correct.
Sorry to say that.
I'm happy about it, man. It's all good.
And you first...
Because it could have been 1943 or 1923 or 1863. That would have been jacked up. That would be something like, or 1813 or 17. You know, it's like, this is cool.
That's cool.
Relatively. You know?
Holy moly.
You know?
Yeah. So, and your first study was engineering.
Correct.
And then you switched to music, which was, and still is, I think, your bigger love.
Definitely.
Are there for you similarities between engineering and working as a jazz musician? Can you explain your choice?
Well, it boils down to the fact that I am who I am in terms of what I like. So I'm into technology, computers, all that kind of stuff, including audio technology. Have been for many, many years, since I was a kid. Radios and tape recorders always fascinated me. And then the actual playing of music was something that also was very interesting to me anyway, just in general. Loved listening to music a lot, and then playing in band was great. Improvising and stuff came a little bit later, you know, improvisation, jazz music, that came after a couple of years of playing in band and stuff. So I developed a love for improvisation, probably based on a combination of the expressive qualities of it, the problem-solving aspect of it. I mean, and that way, engineering and music are very similar, because you're in writing software. When you're actually really writing software to get something done on a computer, there's always a number of ways to solve a problem. And in those days, computers were quite slow, and so compared to what they are now, and we thought a lot about efficiency in our computing study, in our computing work, in our creativity. You had to be creative to make it happen efficiently. And so because the computers were so slow, you couldn't just write some stuff, we call it brute force, just write something, we know it works, but it's too slow. So then how can we make this tighter and faster and more efficient? And that is very creative. And it's similar to negotiating a solo and some chord changes, you know? And so those parts of my brain / personality / psyche are well exercised in music, and they were exercised well in computers too. It just so happens that the music world had the extra emotional component, which the engineering world doesn't really have. And so I think, and also the social component, which the engineering world which also doesn't really have, not by comparison to music. I mean, going out in the world, seeing the world, meeting people, I mean, it's hard to beat that. That said, the challenges financially, I mean, music and musicians are not really well supported. I won't say respected, because we are respected, but we're not supported by societies in general. You get a couple people that have some benefactors or whatever, but most of us, we're out there hustling for every dime, and it just is what it is. But it's fine, you know. They say the fleas come with the dog, right? You know. So I love being a musician, and I've been fortunate enough to figure out number one, how to make money on that side of it, and then I learned how to deal with money through a lot of study, and that's been a huge positive. And in fact, it's interesting, because if I had taken a straight ahead job as an engineer, I wonder if I would have learned my money skills. I wonder if, because I was just a paycheck and everything's cool, and I go and get a car payment and a house payment and everything, and just assume the money's there and not bother, like a lot of people do. Whereas with a musician, I think you have to, at least from my perspective, I feel like I really had to get my money thing together. So that part of it, even though it's a curse, it proved to be a blessing, if you see what I mean. Anyway, the upshot is I consider myself super lucky to have found my path through music and still do a lot of, I don't do computer engineering, I don't write software anymore, but I do a lot with computers. I've been mixing my own records and doing a lot of production work with computers now with the audio side of it for a long time, and that's fantastic. It's fantastic to have the computer skills to be comfortable with computers and do what I need to do for my music. It's great.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, you play saxophone and flute, and these are so-called wind instruments.
Correct.
Right? How much wind do you produce yourself, and how do you understand wind energy in relation to sound?
Well, it's pretty unscientific. You know, for the most part, it's, so I never measured it, but it would be measured in time, and it would be measured in expressiveness, and it would be measured in control. So the ultimate goal is to have control of your sound on whatever instrument you're playing. And so we do specific exercises for that, long tone exercises and overtone exercises and air direction exercises. We do breathing exercises of various types. We strive to develop good habits of breathing, fill up our middle, you know, so which is where the lungs are bigger, down in the middle of the body. So we really try to visualize filling the lungs up, and we stay in shape. You know, we really, I mean, I run, swim, bike. I'm a big avid biker. It's probably the thing I really do the best of the main aerobic exercises. So I bike. And when the weather's good at home, I probably bike at least 30 miles a week, 30, 40 miles a week. So 50, 60 kilometers a week at least if I'm at home, you know, just for fun. And I usually run at least once or twice a week as well, you know, a few kilometers, and I swim whenever I can. So, and I lift weights and stuff. I do a lot of, and I eat really well. I mean, I'm really serious about the health and fitness, and that really helps the wind. No cigarettes, no pot, none of that stuff. Nothing that has any negative effect on the lungs. No risk on that. It's not worth it, you know. So I'm quite careful about that part of it. Careful meaning I take care. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm in any way fearful, because I'm the opposite. I'm not going jumping out of planes, but I'm quite an adventurer in some ways. And I have all kinds of dings from, you know, swimming in reefs and I got all kinds of slices and cuts up from just being physical, bruises and everything. I mean, so I'm not a fearful guy at all, but I take care, you know, I train myself, and then I go out and just dive into stuff. Yeah. So it's great. It's really fun. But the breath is actually the key to life, you know, so it's something that I do. I'm a baby at yoga, but I do some yoga as well, and breath is a big part of that. So I'm conscious of breath, and I mean, lifting weights, you breathe a certain way, all of it. So, good question.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, since 1984, you are a citizen of New York.
Right.
New York City.
85 actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you like the most about your life there in the Big Apple, and what maybe not?
Well, first off, now I moved to New Jersey, which is still in the metropolitan area of New York. We're about 30 minutes away, so it's pretty close. The great thing about New York is, at the time I moved there in the 80s, jazz was really alive and kicking. And the 80s in general were a pretty fearless time. Economically and socially and stuff, it was pretty lively. People weren't as separated and fragmented and kind of, you know, into their individuality quite as much in those days. You know, people didn't have cell phones. Internet was very minimal. Television was pretty minimal. People came out and did stuff, you know. And so I was out all the time. Was hardly ever in except to practice, you know. And I was a kid, of course. I didn't have any responsibilities in those days. I just hung out all the time, and all the clubs were all packed every night because people were, you know, sitting at home was no fun in those days. So and the fear wasn't such a thing, you know. There wasn't any 9/11, and terrorism wasn't something that happened far away, and so everybody hung out. You know, it was amazing. It was great. So as a horn player, I did all these gigs and all these. I wasn't making a ton of money or nothing like that, but I could go out and play a lot. So interact with people, meet all kinds of folks. So it was an amazing time, and New York was great for that at the time. And again, pre 9/11, so New York was still pretty wild and woolly. There was crime and stuff, but it wasn't. You know, it was not a problem for me. Luckily, I got lucky with that part of it. But politically, things were not great, but it was still economically. There was a lot of energy. Money was still. There was a big middle class in New York, and so we hung out a lot with the bourgeois. You know, the black bourgeois had a thing. The regular bourgeois folks, you know, everybody had money and people hung out. You know, and it was just a big social scene. So lots of musicians, lots of music. All the jazz cats were still alive. I mean, a few are alive now, but they're all in their 80s, kind of chilling out mostly. But in those days, they were all in their 50s. You know, Freddie Hubbard, and you see everybody, Art Blakey, McCoy Tyner, I mean, Joe Henderson, everybody was still Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Carmen McRae, I mean, just on and on with, you know, Tony Williams, well, he lived in California, but he came to New York all the time. You know, cats were just, it was an incredible time in those days. So now we fast forward to now, as I grew up, built a family, daughter, house, you know, really trying to build a life, New York was less attractive for that, mainly because it was too crowded for me, having grown up in Kentucky. Born in Cincinnati, but raised in Louisville, Kentucky. Having grown up in Kentucky, it was a little too much for living there with the long-term life. But as a single person exploring, it was amazing. And to cut my teeth as a musician, as they say, you know, getting those early days, playing my dues, perfect for that. When it came time to do the family thing, we decided to, first off, I moved with my girlfriend, eventually wife, into Westchester, which is up north, and then we finally bought a house in New Jersey in 1980. The first house we bought in 1996, and so, you know, 11 years kind of in the New York thing, and then Jersey. And then I was less in the scene. I was still doing touring and making records and all that stuff, you know, in New York all the time doing stuff, but going home to some peace and quiet. And that was great. Then we made a baby, made my daughter, and then that family life became more of the focus and less being around New York itself, but still touring quite a bit, still flying and stuff. But a lot of teaching in those days. While Nicole was little, I did mostly teaching and less touring around, much more teaching and writing. In those days, I got my TV work. I started working for Bill Cosby and some other folks doing some writing, and so that whole thing kind of blossomed in that early 90s, I should say late 90s period. And then the teaching, after the TV thing ran out, the teaching took over all through the 2000s. So 1998 right through 2015 was my main teaching run, but mainly focused in New Jersey and not so much in New York.
And what do you like about the life now?
Well, going into it, going there and coming back is fine. The challenge now is that it's very expensive, and I'm less inclined, because of the kind of where I am in my life, I'm less inclined to be around all the people and all that stuff. The clubs are now struggling much more than they were, and so the whole energy is different. Everything is much more formal. So the clubs are very expensive. Everything is kind of high dollar, you know. The kind of middle class is kind of less, and it's more about an upper class thing, or upper middle class, I should say. But there are some good players and some good clubs still, but not like it was. And now the jazz masters are all gone, so that mostly, so that's gone. But I still enjoy going there. I just don't want to be there that much as far as like living there. But going there is fine. And but it's $15 for the toll to go in, $35-$40 to park. You know, you feel it when you go in. And then it's crowded and people drive kind of crazy and pedestrians everywhere. So you're thinking about that kind of stuff, and the train's kind of trippy if you're carrying gear. So it's a little more of an inconvenience than it was when I lived there. But I was used to it. I was young and no other responsibilities, so it's kind of easy just to kind of come and go. And now it's a little bit more effort to deal with New York compared to those days. So what I don't like is expense. Now I'm really not in the crowds that much. And the overall kind of hassle factor of things. Whereas what I like about it is still the music. The energy is great, you know, especially creative energy. A lot of good young players, man, incredible, beautiful young players. I hear them all the time and really dig that. And still some good clubs to hang in too. So that's a lot to like. My tastes have changed as I've grown up. I keep changing position. My tastes have changed as I've grown up, and so I think my perception and my activities have evolved to go with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, your first gigs in New York you had with the Harper Brothers Quintet and Dr. Lonnie Smith.
Yep.
and also the great Betty Carter.
Yep.
We come back to Betty
Yeah.
in the next question. But what did attract you to play with these artists especially, and what did you experience with them?
Well, the main thing was I was young and eager and just wanted to play. So I got opportunities with those guys. With Dr. Smith, you know, he had a very unique way of playing and still has. Really, you know, creative. And so that really opened my mind up. And the Harper brothers were more straight ahead. And so we had a lot of arrangements and stuff. And so that was a huge learning experience for me too. And then we did a lot of, you know, road touring, like local road touring. We go to DC, Baltimore, Philly, that kind of thing, and play different gigs in different places. And that was a good experience for me, especially in the 80s. I hadn't really done that yet. I played a few little touring gigs, but I hadn't really started really touring yet. So, but the gigs with them, you know, we played all over Jersey, some live gigs in New York. We rehearsed all the time, you know, and that was great. So all a big learning experience for me. And those guys, I learned, you know, I watched them really set their goals and achieve incredible things, which is another important thing, you know, just that power of goal setting and the power of perseverance. They really, you know, I remember seeing them on the Johnny Carson show, saying, wow, these guys, long after I was out of the band, but still, it was like amazing, you know, to see that they achieved such incredible things through good quality music, hard work, doing what needed to be done. Very impressive. So, and from Dr. Smith, the main thing for me was creativity. Just the guy was just like magical, and still is magical.
He's an unbelievable sound also.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
No.
Well, how did you met Betty Carter?
I met Betty because at the time the Harper brothers were active. Wynard was playing with Betty. He was in her band. Wynard Harper was in Betty Carter's band. So she basically became interested in the idea of education, like sharing knowledge, her knowledge, sharing jazz knowledge in general with younger musicians. And so she looked at Philip Harper and I as potential, you know, students. And so part of her, the very beginnings of her Jazz Ahead program were Philip and myself, and just kind of taking us under her wing and involving us in some of her projects. That's how I got to be on her record, Look What I Got. That's how I made some gigs with her, San Francisco Jazz Festival, Berkeley Jazz Festival, I should say. Berkeley Jazz Festival, we played Fat Tuesdays, we played, you know, a few random gigs, you know, around the country. And what she taught us was, her main thing was about swing and about balance and pacing. Like, you know, tenor players, we just want to play a zillion million notes. And she was like, it's not going to work. You know, you got to swing, you got to be in the pocket, you got to leave some space. She was the first one to really, that's why to this day I love playing with singers, because I learned those incredible lessons with her, and she really straightened me out. And it really helped me to this day in every situation, but certainly when I work with singers, which is a lot, you know. So, but that's how I met her, with Wynard Harper. He was really instrumental in connecting us.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned it, Look What I Get, this album, and this record was rewarded with a Grammy.
Correct.
Even.
Yep.
Did this Grammy also influence you?
No.
No.
It's something I can say, it's on my resume, but there's no effect that I'm aware of. Unless someone listens to it and says, oh, he's a real guy, because he's on a Grammy record. And maybe I got a gig or two at some point over the last 30 years since it happened. Because that was 1988, got the Grammy in 99. So now it's 2019. So somewhere in those 30 years, probably someone somewhere saw that record on a Grammy, saw my name, and said, okay, he's okay. I don't know that, but I guess it must have happened.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'm very proud, and I'm proud of it. I mean, it's just no effect that I'm aware of, but I'm certainly proud of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, another station in your career was the Freddie Hubbard Quintet.
Oh, yeah.
You played between 1989 and 1991.
Correct.
How did you get inside Freddie's universe, and what made you richer in your experience with Freddie? What did you learn from him?
Oh, wow. Well,
just in 2 minutes.
Of course, exactly. How do we bring it down? And the PG rated version of it, by the way, because there's a lot of stuff that I can't really discuss in public, but which is a good thing, because I was a young guy. You know, so that's how you learn, man. And you know, we got a range of lessons for sure, which is fantastic. Anywho, all good stuff though, all helpful to me, that's for sure. So I met him because I worked in Tony Williams' band. From Betty Carter, I went to Wynton's band, and then from Wynton Marsalis, and actually my first gig with Betty, the first gig with her, Wynton was there. That's how I ended up getting that gig. Well, two things got me the gig with Wynton. One was that, and number two was that I called him when I got to New York. I just called him on the phone. I said, Mr. Marsalis, my name is Don Braden. I want to play with you. And he took my call. He's like, boy, this guy's bold. So, but I told the students, I said, man, boldness is a good thing. Not prepared for the call, not prepared musically and stuff, but to the best of my ability, but having the willpower to go ahead and call them, the balls to call them, was a positive for sure. And so he showed up at that gig, and I ended up working with him for quite some, a few months. So it was fantastic. But the next big gig I had after Wynton was Tony Williams. And the reason I got that gig was because I'd studied with Billy Pierce in Boston. And Billy, who was Tony's regular tenor saxophone player at the time, had an obligation at Berklee College of Music and couldn't make the entire, a particular tour of Tony's that was 7 weeks long. So I got half the tour, which is amazing. So, Billy they just called me on the phone and said, hey man, can you make half of this tour for these dates, starting September of 1987? And I was like, sure. And it was amazing. I mean, it was because I got a month almost with Tony Williams, and talk about getting your butt kicked. Anyway, it was incredible. Long story short, a couple of years later, his manager, Marianne Topper, she was managing him at the time, and she's still active in the scene. We call her Top Cat. So Top Cat calls me on the phone and says, hey man, Don, Freddie Hubbard's looking for a tenor player. Get your butt down to the Blue Note and sit in with him. Maybe he'll hire you. So I got my butt down to the Blue Note and sat in with him, and he hired me. So that's February of '89, and whatever Sunday it was, probably early February, I guess, February, first week of February or something like that. But in April, I started with him, and we did a State Department tour, U.S. State Department tour, about a month long or so, and went all over the place, Central America, South America. It's an incredible tour. What I learned from Freddie. The main thing I learned from both Freddie and Tony is, Betty too, actually, is the power of consistency. They were consistent, and their energy was very high, and they were just spectacular, basically. I mean, nothing short of amazing every night, And so I got my butt so kicked by Tony already. And so I was kind of ready for Freddie when I got there, because I'd really been shedding for Tony. And then there's kind of two classes of information I got from Freddie. So one was the music, the high level musicality. So chord changes, swing in particular, sound was crazy. Just pure muscularity of just powerfulness, powerfulity, power. The compositions were great. That swing was crazy. So there's that whole class of information. The compositions were amazing. Then there's the life stuff, which were a little more rangy, not always so positive. Some of it was cool, like just the Freddie had a very nice side. He would share information about music, talk about chord changes or whatever, or stories about the tunes or whatever. But then there was a little bit of a challenging side that some guys, had as part of their totality, that might be related to substances, in some cases. And so in Hub's case, if there was a substance involved, some kind of drug or whatever, then we'd have challenges of various types, and including my having gotten fired a few times and rehired the next day. So, so I'm being nice about it. But those moments were challenging, especially at first to a young guy. But then I learned to take it in stride and learn. It taught me a lot, because it taught me how to deal with the range of situations, how people can be in their various states, their various levels. They're not always these bright, beautiful, positive things, even though you feel that when you hear the music. But life is challenging, and life is big and complicated and unique and special. And so, those varied experiences give texture to the situation. And it's not always a beautiful, positive thing, but it's a real thing. It's a learning thing. And it all goes into the music. So it reflects the totality of life, and it reflects the totality of the journey, which is what you need. It's not all love and kisses out here. It's tough out here. So, the love and kisses thing is great, and I'm all about it, but, the rest of it is also part of the deal, and so you negotiate with all of it and take it in and you process and you move on, you learn. And so it's all huge for me, absolutely. And I've been a very super fortunate guy and not had to, have any really seriously bad things. I've been well taken care of in my life, some kind of way. So, to really get kicked around a little bit was right on time, truth be told.
Yeah. Well, even Billy Childs played with Freddie.
He did.
Many times as a pianist. And he just recently received a Grammy for his album Rebirth.
Uh-huh.
And you both also play still together.
We just played together.
Yeah.
Just a couple weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Can you tell me, or do you have any idea how Grammys influence people and their careers?
Grammys? Well, once you in a career, if you get a Grammy yourself, like the Betty Carter Grammy, I didn't get one. We don't get them as sidemen. So for her, especially her first major label record, it was a huge thing for her and her career. And I think for Billy, it's also been very helpful to him because it gives you that level of kind of business level credibility on a business level. In other words, the business characters who are counting beans, because that's what their job is, counting dollars, can say, well, this guy's well acknowledged and audiences will, take notice of a Grammy because it's still a pretty serious award. Wynton had a bunch of Grammys. I mean, it's definitely gives a positive effect on the career. Even a nomination is a positive effect. So it's definitely a good thing to make happen. Now, that said, there's also a political component to it. And, some of the guys who win Grammys know how to work the system. And so that component of it is one of the downsides of it. So as with many business systems, there are ways to manipulate it if you know what you're doing. But it takes energy and a certain amount of, ambition to do that. And so I'd be happy to get a nomination or a Grammy at some point, but let me just produce the project that is at that level, and let's see if and put it out there and and play the game in the proper way, and which means you have to be in NARAS, which is the company that National Association of Recording Arts and Sciences. So that organization becoming a part of NARAS, and being connected with NARAS is a factor in understanding how the things work. So I've done some of that work, and I'll do more of it to get my little toe in the game, and then we'll just see how it goes. But hey, someone like Billy Childs, he deserves it 10 times over. He's a genius, and just done incredible work. So I was really happy to see him get acknowledged finally. It took some years for him to get him,
Mm-hmm.
He made records. He made a ton of records. The first one I'm aware of is Lyric, I think, but he might have got a nomination for the Diane Reeves record. But I know Lyric got a couple of Grammys, and he's gotten Grammys for other stuff. I think he got a nomination for the Laura Nyro record, which is a masterpiece, and then Rebirth. So it's but he's made I've Known Rivers and Portrait of a Player and other records that she should have gotten at least nominated for. Especially I've Known Rivers. That's another masterpiece. He could have won one for that easily. But I don't know what the competition was that year, or what the political side of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a factor too in the whole scene. Like I said, so you never know how that affects. But anyway, that's what I think.
Well, let's go a little bit back in time again.
No.
From 1996 until 97, you were a co-music supervisor and composer for Bill Cosby's weekly TV show.
Right.
Please explain your experience.
Well, what the deal was it was for the CBS show called Cosby, and it was for the Lucas family. So I think in that show he had 2 kids, and they were played by Dougie Doug and Takia. What's Takia's name? He had a daughter and a son in that show, if I remember correctly, or maybe one daughter, and maybe Dougie Doug had another role. Yeah, it's been so long since it's been over 20 years since I worked on that, so I can't even remember the exact characters. But anyway, he was a retired airline employee, and the family was smaller, and the wife was the same as the Huxtables, so Felicia Rashad, I should say, and Madeline Kahn was in the show. Well, she passed away after, unfortunately, but she was in the show, and then Dougie Doug and Takia, whatever her last name is, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, but anyway, there's a cast of characters, of 5 main characters. Anyway, this show was based on One Foot in the Grave, which is a British sitcom that he was looking to model, make an American version of in his own kind of Cosby way. So that's kind of the way it went. I got the gig because I spent a period from 93 to 94 playing with quite a few people, but one of them was Art Farmer, the great trumpeter Art Farmer. So we had a couple of years together. So we did a 2-week run at the Village Vanguard with Art Farmer Quintet. So I was there one night playing with him, and Benny Golson showed up. You know, Benny Golson is his old partner. So Benny Golson saw me play with him and stuff, and took a liking to me. And so he wrote me a nice letter afterwards, and you know, was very supportive. At the end of the letter, he said, "I expect a lot from you," which is like, whoa, pretty cool. Anyhow, so Benny was asked by Bill Cosby to write the theme music for this show, Cosby, in 1995. And by that point, he had, I was already kind of his friend. You know, we were in communication. And Benny said, "I want you to do this thing for me for Bill. I wrote the song, but I want you to produce it." So he told me what to do, he told me who to get, and I did everything. And he introduced me to Dr. Cosby, and we put everything together, did everything went smooth. So then I was in for a second. And then we gave it to the network, and the network didn't like it. They wanted something more upbeat or whatever, because it was a more jazz thing, like a Monk style thing. The song was called Monk's Hat.
Yeah.
And so we redid it. Luckily, they gave us another chance, and we redid the same song in like a Latin flavor. So we did a horn section and stuff, and they liked that. So we ended up, that's the one that actually made the show. So we did Monk's Hat in Latin style, and then I had the gig to write all the other music for the show. So that started in 1996. So every week, I would travel to New York from Jersey. We just bought the house that same year, we were about to buy the house. We hadn't bought it yet, but we were getting ready to do that. So I traveled out every week to see the show, and then every month we'd have sessions, and we'd just record for 4 to 6 hours. We'd record 3-second songs, and we'd come out there with 200 to 300 3-second songs every month, and then the editor would drop those in as bumpers, you know, in between scenes and all that. And every once in a while I wrote a song or two, you know, for certain scenes. So I wrote a feather song, and I wrote a Latin song, and a flute song, I wrote a rap thing for them, you know, just all these different styles of songs for scenes that would be as needed. So that was a gig. So 4 years hanging out with Cos every week, and then, you know, it was over. It was great. It's amazing. Amazing guy. Absolutely amazing guy.
Great.
An amazing situation, amazing experience, and good money. So worked out well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we come back to this age.
Yeah.
With Joris Teepe, the bass player, and he's also the head of the jazz department here at the Prince Claus Conservatorium here in Groningen. You recorded the album Conversations.
Correct.
And that's in a classic trio setting.
Yes, sir.
You on saxophone, Joris on bass, and you have various drummers,
two drummers, yeah.
like Matt Wilson and Gene Jackson.
Correct.
And another one, I think.
No, just two on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, then we have a couple of duo pieces.
Yeah.
As well.
And this trio, or these trios, are called the Trio of Liberty.
Correct.
Can you explain me what is the meaning of the Trio of Liberty for you?
Sure. Well, it came from Joris's visit to New York with his family, and they went to the Statue of Liberty. And he said, "That's cool. Let's call ourselves the Trio of Liberty." I was like, "Okay." So, and then the liberty part, of course, liberty means freedom, right? So, the idea is that in our conversation, the album is called Conversations, and so, you know, the freedom of conversations is what we feature. So the songs are the songs, and the groove and the swing and all that, but the improvisations they're based in us really communicating with each other. It's really more, it's different than a Don Braden record that's focused on Don Braden, you know, and more about Don's compositions and maybe Don's playing or whatever at any given time. It's more about how Don and Joris interact, and how Don and Gene interact, and how Don and Matt interact, and how Matt and Joris interact, and how Gene and Joris interact, and how the three of us tune into each other. That's what it's about. So we have another one coming up, which I'm not sure if you'll ask about that one, but we just finished one called Chemistry, which is the next one. And so that one is with Louis Hayes, the great Louis Hayes, legendary guy, and Jeff Tane Watts, another legendary guy, actually. But of course, Louis Hayes is like a grandfather, godfather to us. But so we have a whole different flavor, but the same concept, and it's awesome. I'm excited, you know, to get that one. So we're gonna have that one out soon.
What does interest you in this special setting? I mean, it's very basic. The drums, the bass, and the saxophone. What interests you? What grabs you?
I guess there's two main things. One is the interaction itself. In other words, the interaction means that if I'm playing, what I play at any given time doesn't necessarily come from me. It comes from either Gene or Joris. So I'm playing and I hear something that Joris plays, and I'm gonna say, how can I incorporate that? Or something that Gene, how can I incorporate that? Help me to change. It inspires me to change direction, or not. But oftentimes I'll change direction and incorporate what they're playing, and so it makes the net output is something new every time for me that doesn't necessarily reflect what I've practiced or what I've worked on or even what I intended to play necessarily, which is super cool. That's number one. Number two is I'm quite harmonically astute as a musician, and so I'm quite, I've studied harmony a lot, I've written a lot, I play a lot of harmony in the saxophone linearly, and so to have a open space without necessarily comping instruments so that I can linearly explore harmony is also really fun. So those are two main things that
okay.
in the musical world that really inspire me.
Yeah. Well, one of the songs on your album is Charles Mingus' Goodbye Pork Pie Hat.
Sure.
Please explain your choice and what you love about this tune.
Well, there's two things I really love about it. Number one is the fact that it's a really soulful tune. It just feels soulful to play it. And number two is the harmony is unique and very slick. And playing it in just duo like we do on the record, it does, that space is a beautiful thing because I can really get into the movements are unique, and we play it different than the standard solo version. We actually play the melody changes, the changes of the melody in our solos, in this case, on this recording, which is not the way they usually do it. There's usually a separate set of solo changes. So we stick with the head changes, and they're pretty tricky to play. And I like that. I mean, I've been kicking my own butt with harmony for decades, and it's painful, but beautiful.
Yeah.
I hope.
But you are also a member of the Charles Mingus Big Band.
I was a member of the Mingus Big Band for 6 years, 92, 98. So I love Mingus music. It's fantastic, And again, at the core of it, it's just soulful. It's a guy who's just genius level guy, just like put it out there. Hard, strong, powerful energy, unique voice, his own unique sense of harmony, rhythm, melody, sound, all of it. And just soulful to the max, man. Just Negroidal, Africa. You totally get like Africa just hits, like really like Duke Ellington, Africa. Just really amazing. Like it's not Africa, but it's really Africa through America. But it's still like I get that sense of Negro energy very powerfully from him, because he just doesn't he doesn't care. He's kind of unbridled in this thing. And that's really special. Ray Brown is Ray Brown is, for example, much more refined. He strikes me, or Ron Carter, much more refined kind of bass players, like through the course of their musical choices or life choices or their life journeys. And Charles Mingus is refined in terms of sophistication, but rough and tumble in terms of the execution. And that quality is just awesome. And the big band captured some of it. That's all-star characters, New York guys kicking butt every single week, man. It's incredible.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the dress code for jazz musicians.
Sure.
Many often I see, especially the older generation, but also now, that it's very important to be dressed stylish and formal.
Sure.
Why is that?
It's about presenting the music with respect. Art Blakey used to say, "They see you before they hear you." So, you're going to come out there and you're looking all raggedy, most people, because we're in a visual society, we're visual beings. Our whole, so much of our life is visual. Our interactions, our personal interactions, even one-on-one, the micro expressions that oftentimes are more important than the actual words are perceived through the visual medium, right? It's someone looking at each other and feeling the sense of, you can tell, you can feel when someone likes you, when they don't like you, when they respect you, when they don't respect you. And it's usually body language and those kinds of things, often subconscious, but all visual. And so to some extent auditory, because obviously someone speaks with a higher voice, that means one thing, a lower voice another thing. So that's a part of it. And then other gestures might be a factor. And of course the content of the actual words are also a factor. But in terms of the bandstand, all you have, especially at first, is the visual side of it. And so people would judge you, and of course the clothing thing is a big deal, right? So, and including things like the way you walk, all these things are all components of how you're perceived. And so with regards to dressing, most people who take the time to dress themselves in a stylish or a partly formal or fully formal way usually take pride in that. And they groom themselves. And grooming is a fundamental fact of animal life. All kinds of animals at all levels groom themselves for various purposes, typically mating. But so let's say important purposes. This mating is super important, right? So obviously humans have this much wider range of experiences than most of the animal kingdom. So we have all these other things that we prep ourselves for. But the upshot is, if we take the time, that gives us a positive self-image most of the time. Unless we're putting on something we don't like, then it gives us a negative self-image. But women, I mean, if they feel like they got something on that looks good, they walk with a thing, and so do men. We all do. And so that thing sells the music in a way. It's part of the presentation, part of the total presentation of the music. And so you walk out there like you just roll out of bed, like you don't give a shit. Pardon my French. Like you don't care. If you want to edit that out, you can. If you walk on the stage like you don't care, like you just roll out of bed and your t-shirt's wrinkled and you got the first set of sweats that you had available, some ratty sneaks, you just jump up there. Well, that's kind of relaxed. And some people say, oh, that's kind of relaxed. And some people are like, wow, doesn't he care enough to he's coming up on stage. Doesn't he care enough or she care enough to whatever. So for better or for worse, this is what, you can have different opinions about whether this is good or not, but the fact is, it's real. People, this is, most Western society, actually all Eastern, Western, most societies have dress that's associated with something that's, okay, I'm now presentable, and I'm going to present myself. And therefore you act that way. Your attitude is projected as well. And so that brings a thing to the music, a certain level of respect. So that, people say, well, this guy is obviously, he comes across as really caring about what he's doing. And so for me, I always dress well when I'm doing gigs, as not formally, but I always dress, nice jacket, everything really together and make sure grooming is together so that I can give the music the best chance to be perceived in a positive way by the audience. Now, if I'm playing for a really super casual situation, we're out in the park or something, or if it's a hot day, or if it's really on the beach or something, that's different. You know what I mean? But if it's like any kind of relatively formal situation, such as a concert, a stage, or a nice club, or whatever, I'm gonna be dressed because I want the thing to feel like you're doing something special, and I am. Jazz music is this incredible, special music, and the last thing I want to do is disrespect it in any way, or to flip it around. This incredible, special music, I want to give it its best chance. Like I said before, for the audience to even on the visual level, realize that something special is about to be presented to the best of my ability, and then we see what happens. But at least the visual side of it is pretty cool. So.
Yeah, well, Stevie Wonder, he's also big for you. He published an album in 1976, Songs in the Key of Life, and the opening song is called "Love is in Need of Love Today."
Yeah.
Which is an unbelievable statement still now.
Sure.
Can you tell me a little bit about your reflection on this statement?
Well, before our interview, we talked about the world and some of my perceptions of it, and my most basic perception is that a lot of challenges in the world can be solved by common sense. And common sense means something like really basic things like let's work together rather than fighting each other. Give respect to get respect. So give love to get love. Give happiness to get happiness. Take care of yourself, If you take care of yourself, you feel good. You feel good, you project good feeling, which brings good feeling to you. It's all really super basic. You know, try to, well, there are a lot of common sense things, but the main thing is, it's not about you and yourself. It's about the team. It's about the family. About the tribe. About the community. You know, and that can scale out to the whole planet. In that thought process, most things, I think most of the challenges that we're facing now could be examined and reframed and dissipated if we just all decided, all of us, especially the leaders, hey, we're going to work together. You know, we're going to be on each other's side rather than you be on my side, which is what happens now. Leaders are like, hey, come to me, do what I say. That's kind of what the kind of patriarchal hierarchy that we're kind of in the middle of on the planet. That thing is kind of like a huge mess. But, you know, certain things get done, but it's a mess, so in my humble opinion. But we can do a lot better with, you know, working together. So the love isn't either love a day, is common sense. It means that, to me, it means that the part of the thing that connects us is love. Part of what connects human beings to each other is the things that set up our abilities to communicate, connect, and love each other. You know, we don't have to be like love, like, you know, it's not about passion. It's about having a sense of empathy for your fellow human. You know, it's about having a friend or friends and sharing the journey with your friends. And that's what you need. I mean, you need that much more than you need like some more money, you know, another car, another girl, you know, whatever it is that people kind of get in their individual pursuits, which are, individual pursuits are important, but if they're individual to the extent that they exclude your fellow humans, that's a problem. I think it's a problem. And I think one of our biggest problems in America certainly is that people are separated. So, you know, some of the things that they love are like, you know, and they think they love them, you know, being on the computer or being on the phone or fiddling with their cell phone. Man, they act like they love their cell phones the way they act when they lose it. Oh my God, it feels like, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but, you know, people really like, they have this big allegiance to their devices or to this individual thing, and that's cool, except that to the extent that you don't communicate and connect, because I tell my students, the jazz arithmetic is 1 + 1, while normally it's 2 in like linear arithmetic. In the jazz world, 1 + 1 is 4. And the reason that's true is because you put a saxophone player who's good, okay, cool. A piano player who's good, okay, that's cool. But you put them together, a great saxophone player and piano player, together, who really love each other that's not like love like in the romantic way, but like love each other musically or connect, like Joris and I, we connect to each other. You put us together, it's like, boom, you got something way more. Because that thing, you know, makes the two of us together, we come up with something that's much more powerful than what we could do individually. So, and then the result is something that inspires love, inspires, you know, our fellow humans it energizes them. So yeah, love, which is what we give to our audience, is in need of love, right? So in other words, love comes from love. That's really what that means to me. Love comes from love. And so you bring love and you produce more love. You bring darkness, you produce darkness, you know? And that's like, that's what you see so often. Right? Someone gets mad, then someone else gets mad. Someone says something, then someone else says something else. And before you got this argument that didn't have to be there because, you know, the darkness brought more darkness. Where you bring love to somebody, they're going to, you know, then you got a shot at moving it towards a more empathetic scenario, which is going to have a better outcome almost every time. Does that make sense?
Great. Well, just recently you published another incredible album, Earth, Wind and Wonder.
Yeah.
With songs from Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder, and even from yourself.
Right.
Well, the missing part are the vocals.
Right.
And they are really missing because they are unbelievable in the original versions of Maurice White and Stevie Wonder, of course. Please explain your idea and choice.
It's basically what it boils down to is the Earth, Wind and Wonder project is like another contemporary standards project. So in 2000, I did my first contemporary standards, a full album of contemporary standards. I learned to play by playing the classic standard tunes, Autumn Leaves and Green Dolphin Street, and popular songs of the 30s and 40s, basically. The Nearness of You and Body and Soul and blah blah. So that's how I learned to play, and that's how I've created and connected to audiences through playing those songs that those people that know those songs know. And so my idea with contemporary standards is but we do them instrumentally because that's the format that allows for the space of instrumental improvisation, which is what jazz mostly is. And so the vocal component, of course, is very important, and you can also do improvisation with the vocal side of it. But the vocal presentation part of it is a specific thing. The jazz instrumental improvisation part of it is its own specific thing, and that's a very important, kind of central attribute to what jazz is. And so with the instrumental Earth, Wind and Wonder repertoire as part of the contemporary standards concept, the idea was to explore new standards. So do the same thing I was doing with Body and Soul and all those tunes, which also have important words, and it's the same routine. All those tunes have great Misty, all those tunes have great words, but we put the words aside and go for the melody and focus on that part, and then we focus on the harmony. Now, if people listen to words, they're gonna focus on the words. That's it. If the words are not there, then there's other beautiful elements. Misty is a beautiful song. It's a beautiful melody. It's a beautiful harmony. So same for Body and Soul. Same for Can't Hide Love. Same for I Can't Help It. Same for Higher Ground. They have beautiful harmony, beautiful melodies. So my goal was to do the same thing that all my heroes have done. Take these beautiful songs and explore them through other lenses. And that's what the Contemporary Standards Project is really about. Not that I won't have singers at some point. I love singers. I work with a ton of singers. But this particular project, the Earth, Wind and Wonder project, has so far been mainly about exploring the harmony, melody, rhythm, arrangements, and improvisational possibilities of those songs. And they end up being presented in a completely different way than you would normally present them when they have the vocals.
Great. How do you understand spirituality in relation to your work and life as a musician and a human being?
Well, it's pretty basic. I think of spirituality as the thing that connects us. In other words, whatever we are other than the machine could be, hopefully is, or who knows exactly what it is, because some people think they know, but I don't think people really know the real nature of the spirit, whatever that is, that thing that makes us individuals, that thing that makes us somehow go beyond what this machine is. Emotions and things, a lot of them can be reflected chemically and stuff, but there are some things you just can't easily fully explain with chemistry or micro expressions or like the connection that certain people feel for each other, or the fact that I've lost count the number of times I thought about somebody before the phone rang. I've lost count, So I'm thinking that, or I see somebody from across the room, like my wife when I first met her, from across the room, I could just feel, so I'm thinking some spiritual thing that connected us. And I have other friends the same, to whom I feel a connection that could be described as spiritual. My perception, and honestly, it doesn't go much deeper than that. It's, in a sense, for me, especially as a scientist, as a professional scientist, basically, I have very little hard evidence or very little hard descriptions. It's more about a feeling, and even not a feeling like an emotional feeling, but just kind of a combination of a mental and emotional feeling of something special that connects people to each other, and that makes them individuals as well, and helps define them. And probably as it relates to music, it's the thing that partly drives the flow of improvisation. Because I can tell you right now, whatever good solos I've played in my life, they have not come from my brain. only, or my emotions only, or even those two working together. They come from a higher power, whatever that might be. They come from the spirits of all my bandmates working together, however that precisely might work, no idea. But I know that if I program a computer to play like I play, it's not going to be, at the level of me just doing it with my bandmates. So the actual calculations and stuff involved, which are significant, still are not what it's about. What it's about is whatever the deeper me has to express or wants to express, filtered through the regular me that hopefully gets out of the way, and then come on out. But the regular me helps. The regular me is like language and sound waves and stuff and technique. But then in the end, it has to get out the way so that the higher me, whatever that is, the spiritual me, the part that connects in a way that I can't describe to my colleagues and to my fellow humans, that part of it, I have to get out the way and let that part flow. And that's the best thing. So the saxophone plays itself in that case. And I'm just there, hanging out, letting the saxophone play itself. It can't always do that. The old joke of Pat Metheny says, yeah, man, every once in a while everything's flowing and I just guitar plays itself and I'm just in bliss. But for the other 363 days of the year, I have to, all that practice is what I have to deal with. So in the end, when we actually do what we do, there's a balance between our mental, emotional, spiritual selves that they're always kind of shifting and changing based on what's happening. So, but the goal is to let the totality be its totality. Prepare yourself and get on the bandstand and then try to tap into that thing that goes beyond the machine, goes beyond the flesh and blood and the brain and finds whatever else there is, the spirit, and let that come. And then that's the X factor. That's at least a part of the X factor of what makes it really special. That's what you hear somebody play. It's like, that's not some calculations. That's somebody who's like, God's talking to them or something. Whatever that means exactly. So.
Good. And what is the most beautiful for you being a musician today?
People connecting with people, audiences, fellow bandmates, creativity, love in the sense that I love, love has got these multiple levels. It's super important love. It's like, because we don't get paid enough to really, like the payment part of it it's not our motivation. So business characters who are addicted to money, I think they're just addicted. I think it's pure addiction that they're just dealing with. The serious business guys who are like trying to amass, billions and stuff. And once it goes past like 10 or 20 or 30 million, it gets those really big numbers and it's about that. I think it's an addiction. I don't think it's, because money is not or even business success is not something that necessarily engenders love. Helping somebody, connecting with somebody, that is what I think love is. I think they become expert at it and they become good at it and they achieve incredible things, but I don't think love is a motivation in that case. I think the motivation is the addiction to the reward. And maybe love is too. Maybe it is an addiction to a reward as well, but the reward is a more human-based reward, not a paper or gold coins or whatever its currencies are. That kind of reward. A reward of the thing that really connects us, which is our humanity, and that connection is what drives us. I mean, life is about that. Life is about us bouncing off each other. 1 + 1 + 4 thing. It's really about that. It's like even with this interview. Like if I'm by myself and I'm reading some questions and I'm trying to say it, that's one thing. But because we're interacting, the thing is definitely. I'm sure I'm thinking of things that I wouldn't think of if I'm just by myself. It's just that thing is that human connection creates the next level of productivity, output, power, of output, substance, the next levels of those things. And so we do the music out of love mostly. We get paid because we have to pay our rent, whatever. But in the end, I think a lot of us would do it for free if all that stuff was covered. Like if we had everything taken care of, I wouldn't be. I would just come and play somewhere. I wouldn't. If I had a house already, and then I had no mortgage and no bills, and the car was cool, and everything I needed, food, whatever, and the family was cool, I would just show up and play. Absolutely, I would. And so, in many cases, unless it's somebody I didn't want to play with, if I didn't, but if it's anybody that I wanted to really make music with, I wouldn't care what it paid. And so, but don't take that. Don't, offer me €5 for a gig. Now that you've heard me say that, but because business is business, I suppose. But we do it because we love it, and that that part of it is, I think, a pretty wholesome motivation, in my humble opinion. Because we get the love, we experience the love, and then we share the love, and then we engender and inspire the love, and love in its biggest sense, not like a romantic love, but love in the sense of what I really mean is, if you got technical about it, to be more like empathy or happiness or energy, something like that. But in the end, it comes from a place of, where we come from is a place of love. It comes from passion for the music and passion for being expressive and creative. Feeling like we're doing something meaningful, feeling good when we do it, knowing that we're part of a powerful tradition that has a lot of positivity and energy and love in it, and knowing that what we're doing, what we put out into the world, contributes to the world and doesn't take away from it. It adds positivity, it adds energy, inspiration, substance, stuff to think about, stuff to feel, stuff that makes you stronger, better, more powerful, more empathetic, those kinds of things. And we have to be, to do it, we have to be generous, the ego has to move out the way, we have to be supportive, we have to have a teamwork mentality, we have to be thoughtful, we have to be disciplined, we have to be empathetic, we have to be finished. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cool, great.
Great.